I've read all 14 of the Apothecary Diaries light novels, plus volumes 15 and 16 of the web novel. I'm Uppheavy Otaku, and this is why I think the series is going to end with Lady Gyokyo being revealed as the final villain. Obviously, this video is going to have a ton of spoilers, so if you are not interested in hearing about things that happen outside of the anime in the web novel or in the light novel, this may not be the video for you, but feel free to skip to the end for a spoiler-free idea that I think you might want to hear about. Okay, so I'm going to break this video down into 3 sections. The first section, we're going to talk about some of Lady Gyokyo's possible motivations. Then we're going to move into literary parallels from other parts of the story. And then we're going to wrap up with a conclusion I hope everyone is following along about, but the Emperor has to die and somebody has to kill him. And considering all of this, I think the evidence supports that it would be way more shocking for Lady Gyokyo to never be revealed as a villain, as opposed to her actually being the villain in this series. Let's get started. Lady Gyokyo has a lot of motivation to turn to villainous activity. The main one being her life is not her own, but she wants it to be. A great example of how this plays out is very early on in the series when we see how she responds to Lady Fuyu, right? Lady Fuyu manages to outsmart the Emperor, outsmart her family that gave her to the Emperor, and secure her freedom and her love. And Lady Gyokyo is very forthcoming with Mama when she says, hey, I think I might be jealous of that. I also think we see that come up again during the branding scene with Jinshi, Mao Mao, and the current emperor as well. When I first read that in the novel, my first thought was, this is so ironic because he's branding himself with Lady Gyokyo's seal, but this is really an effort to show Mao Mao his loyalty to her. It's not about being loyal to Lady Gyokyo at all, in my opinion. And I think Lady Gyokyo acknowledges this, and that's why she says, is that really what you were after? And she says it scowling, right? The text says she has a scowl on her face when she says that, meaning she's not really pleased with this outcome. Now, I know some people read that and take that to mean she is going to be in opposition of Mao Mao and Jinshi's relationship. That's not what I see when I read that. I read that as, oh my goodness, here is yet another woman who has managed to secure love and freedom. And here I am trapped in this crazy situation. Lady Gyokyo comes from a family where she very much so had to fend for herself. And we'll talk more about her family later in this video. But I think watching Jinshi pledge his loyalty to her, but for the sake of Mao Mao, that's something she's envious of, something that she wants to find for herself, someone that is going to be loyal to her, right? And we know that ain't the Emperor. I also think that when we look at Lady Adwa, she has shown us that not every mother wants their child to be the Emperor, because being the Emperor is not all it's cracked up to be. And Lady Gyokyo is described as both intelligent and careful. So surely we can assume she sees the same things that Lady Adwa sees. That's why I don't think she actually wants her child on the throne. I think a lot of people think my reasoning stems from the fact that she wants her son to be the next emperor instead of Jinshi, and that's why she's going to be the villain. I disagree. I think she's going to be the villain because she wants Jinshi to be on the throne so that she can secure freedom for her children and for herself if she can. Like I said, when Lady Adwa petitions the emperor saying, hey, like, I know this is a selfish ask, but please put one of your other children on the throne instead of Jinshi, she's acknowledging that, you know, the mothers might not agree with this, the children might not want this, but let my baby be free, right? I can 100% see Lady Gyokyo wanting to make a similar request, though she does not have the relationship with the emperor to actually be able to voice it. So she's going to have to turn to other methods. Another thing that I think really ties into her motivations would be one of the major themes of the show, and that's covert feminism and some of the lengths that the women of this time will go to secure freedom and to take back their power in a society, in a time, in a culture where women are regarded as property. Even the most high-born woman is still nothing more than property, than a tool, than a game chip to her family, right? We see this with Lady Gyokyo. We see this with Yao or NN. I always get them two mixed up, but y'all know which one I'm talking about. We see this with Shisui, right? There are so many examples of this in the story. And I think Lady Gyokyo's story is also an example of this, right? What are the lengths that she will go to to secure her freedom and her agency. Now, in this case, not only for herself, but for her children. More than that, Lady Gyokyo is a keen observer. The story tells us that multiple times. And so we have to assume that if she's a keen observer and she's intelligent, that she's also learning from those that she's watching, which makes me wonder if she's picking up what Lady Anchi is doing. Lady Anchi is toppling the empire. We all understand that, right? Like everybody sees that, right? Every time people mention in the story, especially in the later novels, oh, Lady Anchi did this, but this is the effect of that. Lady Anchi did this good thing, but this is the effect of that. I think it becomes more and more clear that Lady Anchi is doing all of this stuff intentional, right? A major thing that comes to mind is she's the one that has put a stop to creating eunuchs. Great idea, obviously, but if there are no more eunuchs, who is going to work in the rear palace? I know a covert mastermind when I see one, okay? And so I have to assume that the writings are on the wall for a character that is also intelligent as Lady Gyokyo is written to be. That plus in light novel 4, when Shisui is outlining her plan to topple the empire, the novel says, the one who topples a kingdom is always a beautiful vixen. If that's not foreshadowing, I don't know what is, especially because we know that Shisui's plan to topple the nation did not go through as planned. So somebody got to step up next, but keep that in mind for later in this video, okay? Let's get into it. Now that we're on the topic of Shisui, I think Lady Gyokyo and Shisui have so many story parallels. It would be foolish to ignore how things played out for Shisui and not try to interrogate the text and find places where it can play out the same way for Lady Gyokyo, right? They're both described as dolls who were used as political pawns to further their family's agenda. In Shisui's case, we know that the agenda was wholly negative. And after spending all that time in the Western capital with Lady Gyokyo's people, I don't believe they have any good plans afoot, okay? All their plans is probably just as negative, if not worse, right? And we also see in Shisui's story that at some point in Shisui's life, she realizes that just doing nothing and going along with being this doll, this political pawn, is not the life she wants for herself, and she decides to veer into another direction, and we've all seen how that plays out, right? Lady Gyokyo has a similar realization in the text. She literally says, soon I'm gonna show everybody I'm not the little dress-up doll they always thought I was. That to me, when I read that part in the book, was an immediate callback to Shisui's story, right? In that same scene that I just referenced, she also says, her words, not mine, she says she don't care about being evil as long as she get what she want. Like, now in this instance, she is talking about the relationship, or maybe a better word would be like the feud, the back and forth between her and her brother. But I think that's also a philosophy of life. If that is your philosophy going into one situation, then surely that could be the philosophy for your life going into other situations. But while we're on the topic of her family, throughout the novel, we keep seeing instances of her like sending letters back home filled with information about things that are happening in the kingdom, in the imperial palace, what have you. And it's under the guise of like strengthening trade and being a good investment and economic decision for them to know some of the comings and goings. But we can also assume in a story about the imperial succession that is so filled with politics and espionage, there's also a little bit of, you know what I'm saying? A little bit of tea spilling. Tea that should not have been spilled back to that family. Here's my thing. Spill your tea to your family, honey. I'm never going to stop you from doing that. However, when we meet her family, we realize that they are all, and I mean ALL, all horrible, even down to the little boy, even down to the children. They're all horrible. No redeeming qualities. Maybe a little girl that was with Mama. Maybe I'll give her a pass. But she was only half anyway, so I'm gonna let her slide. The rest of them were like really like objectively horrible people. Those are the people she's feeding insider information to. What does she think she's doing with that information if she's so innocent? That doesn't make sense. She has to know that something is being planned, and by not being forthcoming about that plan to the people that the plan would affect, I have to believe she's in on it. She's going with it. Which brings me to my next point, because this story isn't just filled with literary parallels, it's also filled with some of the best use of literary devices I have seen in a novel in a very long time. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Red herring and Chekhov's gun are scared. of Natsu Hyuuga, okay, girl? If she creates a moment in the story, you can rest assured it will have a payoff at some point down the line. If she drops off a piece of information, especially if she's dropping off the piece of information more than once, it is going to have a payoff somewhere down the line. We've seen this so many times. And a great example of this is in the very beginning. The plot kicks off when Xiaolan tells Mao Mao that the current emperor is cursed. None of his children survive to adulthood, which means that this story is going to follow the imperial succession. I keep saying that over and over again, even in my TikToks, but it's because it's such a major clue. And the reality of the situation is there is nothing to succeed if the current emperor lives on. He's gonna have to go for the story to wrap up. I personally think Natsu Senpai was trying to end this story during the surgery arc. I knew for sure, I'm like, oh, okay, the current emperor is not gonna make it through the surgery, and he's gonna put it in his will that Jinshi need to be on the throne. That's how he gonna find out. Mama gonna, like, I thought that that's how they were gonna just wrap the story up. Because without the emperor passing away, then there's no need to find out who's going to succeed him next. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, there's no real conclusion to the story if there's never a need for someone else to sit on the throne. The story could end by just saying, oh, it's decided Jinshi will be the next emperor, but like, that's not a satisfying ending. There has to be a need for someone to take the place of the emperor. And so we know that he's young. He's too young to die of natural causes, and he done already survived a surgery arc. So how else is he gonna go? Sounds like a murder mystery trial to me. And so then the question becomes, who's going to do it? There's only a handful of people that actually have access to him, right? I could see it being Suiren. I could see that. I'm not gonna hold you. I could see that. Just because they always talk about how Suiren was such a head buster and we ain't seen her bust no heads yet. But I think it's a bit more logical to think that it's going to be Lady Gyokuyou, because Lady Gyokuyou has the motivations and the access to the emperor that not many other people have. Now that I've said that out loud, Suiren got a little bit of access to him too. But I don't think they've been, I think we can still see her be a head buster later down the line. You know, let me not digress. It's Lady Gyokuyou to my book. I also think that Lady Gyokuyou has been like testing methods for killing somebody via poison since the beginning of the story. Just walk with me. Just walk with me. In web novel 16, we see an example of a woman, a former courtesan, now a concubine, who has been slowly poisoning her child, right, as a means to an end. And what I found so fascinating about this scene is that before they set up this scene, they mention Lady Gyokyo's family. It's, to me, it's the most random bringing up of Lady Gyokyo's family. We have not heard about them in like 6 novels. Where did they come from? And for me, it just felt like that was meant to be a callback to what we know about Lady Gyokyo's family and Lady Gyokuyou. And I instantly thought about my number one unanswered question from light novel 1. Why did Lady Gyokuyou not succumb to the poison powder the same way Lady Liwa did? Why was Lady Gyokuyou using a different powder than her child? They should have been the same complexion, particularly with both of them being partially foreign. Why was Lady Gyokyo's child a better complexion match for her lady-in-waiting than for Lady Gyokuyou? That to me never made sense. Lady Gyokuyou should have also been getting slowly poisoned because they should have been using the same powder. Also, why did Lady Gyokuyou wait until after Lady Liwa's son had passed away before she brought it to Jinshi's attention that somebody had tried to warn her about the powder? That to me seems like something I would want to involve security about very early on, because how did this person even get close enough to my palace to put this here? We got to figure out who this is immediately. So why did she wait until after the prince had passed on before she brought it to Jinshi's attention? This is something that has always never made sense to me. And seeing that in novel 16 just felt like a callback. I genuinely think Lady Gyokuyou was slowly poisoning Lingli. I do. I don't know if she wanted to kill her. I don't know if she just was trying to weaken her in order to see like the effects. But Lady Gyokuyou has an interest in poison. She has an interest in Mao Mao's ability to make poison, make drugs, identify poison, in a way that I feel like, again, we have the red herring, we still need the payoff. I think she's going to poison the emperor in some way, shape, or form, kill him while her children are still young, put Jinshi on the throne, and then dip. That's how I think the story is going to end. And do you know what? I love that for her. Did I describe it as evil? Yeah, kind of is. I'm not against it. Rooting for her. Like, I mean, the facts are the facts. Evil is evil. But I support women's rights and women's wrongs. I don't want that to be misconstrued here. I'm not done, but if you've made it this far in the video, please don't forget to give it a like and share this with your friend that loves Apothecary Diaries as much as you and I do, okay? I would love to grow this channel. Okay, so let's go over the facts. She has the motivation, okay? Her freedom is worth whatever it's worth to her. 2, with the story parallels we see, the precedent has been set for her to be not only the next villain for the kingdom, but for the novel series in general. And 3, couple that with the fact that Natsu Hyuuga is a master storyteller, and the signs are all there. I said at the beginning, and I'll say it again, all things considered, I would be more shocked if Lady Gyokuyou was never revealed to be a villain in this series than if she was revealed to be a villain in this series. And if you enjoyed this video, you are in for a treat. I'm thinking about doing an Apothecary Diaries rewatch series starting from season 1, episode 1. It'll be less about reactions and more about breakdowns, offering additional context from the book that doesn't really show up in the anime, and tying in things that we've learned so far from the anime from season 1 and season 2 to things that were laid out for us in the very beginning. So if you're all caught up on the anime, the rewatch series will be spoiler free for you. Let me know if you're interested in something like that. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next The Apothecary Diaries Explained video.